Madame şimdi müzikleri diyorum ki.
ಎರಡದನ್ನು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ಸಲ್
I cannot talk right now.
क्या हम कर सकते हैं नफ्स हाँ
Our purpose is to instigate a revolutionary shift.
Participants, I request you to mute yourselves, please. Thank you for muting yourselves. Good evening, everyone. It is 4:30 p.m. and we will begin our program. We will begin by honoring our national anthem by rising. I request everyone to take a stand and honor the national anthem. भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब is over to my colleague, Ms. Rhonda Devecha.
Greetings, everyone. I am Rhonda Devecha, and together with my amazing team of staff and students, I welcome you all to yet another event of the Department of Human Development of the College of Home Science, Nirmala Niketan, affiliated to the University of Mumbai. This is the second event of our alumni series. It is entitled Creating Accessibility for Inclusion through Adaptive Design, featuring our prestigious alumna, Ms. Michelle De Mello, and her colleague, Ms. Tamara Morgan. They will be introduced a little later by our moderator. Today, we also have with us our dear principal, Dr. Geeta Ibrahim, and members of our management. We have also Dr. Anuradha Bakshi, the head of our department, and our moderator for today's event. We have Ms. Payal Maheshwari. We have Dr. Kamini Rege, Ms. Khyati Sampath, Ms. Brenda Fernando, Ms. Gulnaz Engineer, and our team of outstanding student volunteers. And of course, most importantly, we have you all, our dear participants. So once again, with the whole team who I have just mentioned just now, I welcome you all to today's session. As is most fitting, we shall first begin with a small prayer. I now invite Dr. Kamini Rege to lead us in prayer.
Opening prayer. As we gather here in the harbor of your safety, we thank you for fellowship and family. We ask that you will strengthen us, restore us, and inspire us with your love. Lord, would you fill us with your space so that as we journey onwards, we would pour out your love and grace to others. We ask that our souls would catch the wind of your spirit so that we would take your promises to all the earth. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Dr. Kamini Rege, for the prayer. I would now invite Ms. Payal Maheshwari to share the message that the president of our management, Dr. Maggie Alessu, has sent for us today.
Dr. Maggie's message. I would like to congratulate Dr. Geeta Ibrahim, the principal, Dr. Anuradha Bakshi, the head of the Human Development Department, and the whole team for organizing webinar series during this time of lockdown. The first series conducted by the Human Development Department was very inspiring. The speakers touched our hearts so deeply that we felt highly motivated to cope up with the anxiety and fear the pandemic has caused, and it has helped us to be more creative and productive in our approach. I learned that today we have with us our alumna, Michelle De Mello, who works in a non-profit organization called Adaptive Design Association. I wish Michelle and the whole department the very best on behalf of the entire Nirmala Niketan management team. I am sure that the very topic, creating accessibility for inclusion through adaptive design, will surely enrich and enlighten us to be more proactive to our approach towards reaching out, not only to children or persons with disability, but also to all who are grappling with the present pandemic and the uncertainty it has caused. Wish you all once again a very enlightening session this evening. Thank you.
We thank Dr. Maggie Alasu for those kind and inspirational words. And we also thank Ms. Payal Maheshwari for sharing them with us. It is now my pleasure to invite our dear principal, Dr. Geeta Ibrahim, to share her message for us today.
Ms. Rhonda, I just wish to inform you that the principal has not been able to join us today.
Okay. That's, hello?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Rhonda.
I know our principal, maybe she wasn't able to join us today for whatever reason, but I can imagine totally that her constant blessings and encouragement is always with us. It does keep us going. It keeps us motivated to do more and more in spite of all the trying times we are going through. So it's okay if Dr. Ibrahim is not able to be here with us today. We know you are with us in spirit and we understand your motivation and encouragement. I would now invite Ms. Priyanshi, who's one of our MSc Part 2 students. Ms. Priyanshi will introduce Dr. Bakshi, our moderator for today's session. So Priyanshi.
Priyanka, you were not audible. Can you start again?
Yes, sure, ma'am. Dr. Anuradha Ji Bakshi is the head of the department and an associate professor at College of Home Science, Nirmala Niketan. Dr. Bakshi taught to the university across specializations in both BSc and MSc Home Science at Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda and was awarded the Srimati Ichhagauri Kuvelji Nayak Gold Medal and the Dr. Pramila Pathak Award for Outstanding Research and Coursework. She completed her PhD from the Department of Child and Family Studies, University of Tennessee at Knoxville, USA, and obtained the Outstanding Research Award for her doctoral research. The years she spent in USA added to her deep appreciation of individual and cultural diversity. She began her teaching career in 1986 at the Department of Human Development and Family Studies, Faculty of Home Science, which is now called as Faculty of Family and Community Sciences, Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. She taught undergraduate students and coordinated a National Institute of Mental Health funded research laboratory at PhD Scholar in USA. In Mumbai, before joining our college, she was teaching at the College of Social Work, Nirmala Niketan, whilst also holding the post of Associate Research Director. She enjoys engaging in conversations both within and outside the classroom. She also loves putting her words in written form and has published a co-edited book, several chapters in books, and papers in journal. She is a member of chairperson of various boards of studies and is one of the two chief editors of the Routledge, Taylor and Francis Scopus listed journal, that is British Journal of Guidance and Counseling.
Thank you so much, Priyanshi. And yes, thank you for that introduction. We are definitely privileged to have Dr. Bakshi on our team as our head of our department and today as the moderator. So I now hand over the platform to Dr. Bakshi.
Thank you so much, Rhonda, for your most kind words. And once again, I welcome everyone to the main part of our program today. That is the interaction with the staff of Adaptive Design Association located in New York City, USA. That is Ms. Michelle DeMello and Ms. Tamara Morgan. It is part of our series, as Ms. Rhonda has already explained, where we want to capture the lives of our alumni and simultaneously we want to learn in detail or get a glimpse into a field in which they are thriving. So we find that we have our alumna, Ms. Michelle DeMello, thriving in the disability sector. And I would like to now introduce Ms. Michelle DeMello. Can we change the spotlight to Ms. Michelle DeMello? Thank you so much. Michelle is our department alumna, as you already know. She completed her BA Psychology from Ruparel College and MSc Human Development from our college. She also has an MA in Developmental Psychology from the University of California at Davis, USA. Michelle lived in multiple cities in India growing up: Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Kolkata. She loved the diverse multicultural exposure. She moved to California in the early 2000s to study at the University of California at Davis. Both her academic experience and the friends from across the globe have expanded her appreciation of the joy that diversity brings. She has taught undergraduate and postgraduate courses at UC Davis and at Nirmala Niketan. She loved being an educator, and she had thought that she would continue on that career trajectory. That is before she fell in love with working at Adaptive Design Association. She has lived in New York City for almost a decade and has been working at Adaptive Design Association, that is ADA, for almost 7 years now. She is their grant writer. Reading, listening to music, cultural arts, and creative culinary arts are among Michelle's other favorite activities. I'm so deeply delighted to have you here, Michelle, sharing your expertise, and it will provide a window into the work of ADA and be a source of inspiration for all of us here. Thank you so much, Michelle.
My pleasure.
I would now like to introduce Tamara Morgan. Tamara, I'm so profoundly grateful that you have joined us today. And I must share with the participants that we had planned to start the meeting for the organizing team at 3:45 p.m. Indian Standard Time, and which was, it was 3:45, so it was 6:15 a.m. in New York City, Eastern Time. And it was 3:35 and I looked at my phone, so that was 6:05 New York City time, and I got a message saying, "We are waiting, Tamara and Michelle are in the waiting room." So your dedication and all that you both have put in over the month to put this webinar together today, all of us, the whole department and all the participants, we are so grateful. Tamara Morgan is an artist. She is a past art therapist with an MA in creative art therapy from NYU, that is New York University at Steinhardt, and co-host of Disability Redefined, an online television show. She is an eternal optimist and a believer that people need people in order to create a better world. Through her art, she explores the power of diverse bodies, love, connections, achievement. As a therapist, she worked for several years in the inner cities, supporting children, adolescents, and their families to find healing through the creative arts, encouraging them to embrace tools of strength and resilience that they have within themselves. As a co-host of Disabilities Redefined, the online television show, she has worked to unshape the constructs of ableism. She currently works to encourage communities to embrace diversity and adaptations at the Adaptive Design Association, New York City. Once again, a most hearty welcome to Tamara Morgan and to Michelle DeMello.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are ready to begin, and Michelle is starting with the session. So it's over to Michelle.
Well, thank you, Anu, for that introduction. And it was nice to see some familiar faces from long ago. Tamara and I are both very excited to have been invited to this great series, and we look forward to sharing more about our work at Adaptive Design we hope that you leave the session with a sense of how even the simplest of solutions can sometimes be life-altering for someone. And we are obviously open to any more questions or follow-ups and towards the end of the session. So as Anu has given you quite a very detailed history and my background, so I did, after my time at Nirmala Niketan and my time at UC Davis, I did think that education was going to be the path that I would be on. And when I moved to New York, that is what I was doing. I was looking for jobs as adjunct faculty or any kind of teaching position. And while I was looking for jobs, a good friend that I made in New York suggested that I volunteer at this very innovative, this amazing nonprofit that she knew about. Her friend was the executive director, and they were always looking for people with my kind of background to help. So although I was initially reluctant because I had not really volunteered anywhere before, I did go in. And a year later, I was their grant writer. And 7 years later, here I am writing grants for them. And I still, even after so many years, I still wake up excited about my job. I still wake up energized by the mission of adaptive design. And that to me is important, especially with the kind of work that I do. As Anu mentioned, I'm the grant writer. And some of you may have written grants, many of you might have been part of the process, and you know it can be an exhausting process. I'm responsible for about a third or the fourth of the organizational budget in any given year. And it's multiple iterations of applications, tight deadlines, very boring, long, winded red tape, and obviously the inevitable rejections. So to keep yourself motivated and going through that, it is very important that you connect with the mission, and that I have lucked out and I found a space and work and colleagues who are amazing in every way, and they keep me motivated and energized to go to my job and move through all these challenges. Anu, next slide.
Yes, I'll start the screen share.
Okay.
So we'll
just move to the next one.
Yes.
So that was a little bit about me. And instead of moving directly into the mission and some abstract ideas about what we do, I thought maybe it would be best if I started with an actual case study. So you get a sense of what are the kind of cases that we have, and also what is the nature of the work that we do. So on the screen, the photograph that you're seeing is of a 6-year-old girl named Sanaya. And in the second photograph, she's sitting there with her mother. And so we met Sanaya, I would say about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. This was about 2 years after a horrifying accident that she and her mother had been in. So they were involved in a drunk driving accident, and both of them were really hurt. Sanaya more so, unfortunately, than her mother. And post the accident, she was tetraplegic or a quadriplegic. So she lost most of the ability in her limbs. She has limited use of her arms. She has no sensation beneath the diaphragm. So it was really it took a lot of work at the rehabilitation center to get her to a state where she could even sit in this position. And that is where we met her and her mom. They came to us because after the accident, there was a lot of they had to go through a lot of medical processes, and their insurance covered hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of medical attention. However, by the time they reached us, she needed custom adaptations and things that would allow her to do basic activities, but they were not covered by insurance. So that means she would not have access to any of that. And we at Adaptive Design, when we met them, we were like, this is exactly why we're here. This is what we do. We look at children, we see that they have a need and they have no other resource or space to find the adaptations that would make a huge difference. That would mean the difference between can and cannot, right? So we consulted with her mom and her therapist and all that, and we built 3 different items for her. In the photograph, you can see we built her a rocking chair. We built her the activity chair and table, and there's also a dining chair that she can use. So what this means is Sanaya can now comfortably sit at her computer or her laptop and use that for academic purposes. You can see her hanging out with her mom there, and they're having some kind of playtime activity. When a therapist comes in, that's very useful. The rocking chair means she has some form of movement other than just sitting in her wheelchair, which is usually what happens with a lot of children with disabilities who don't have recourse to other positioning or seating equipment, is they're confined to one wheelchair for hours together, or maybe just the whole day till they're moved to a bed. So this makes a huge difference in the joy that she finds in life. It's not just about being able to do, she can do her academics better, she can meet with friends, engage in play, but it's also important for social engagement. It's also important for emotional connections. So these, and her mother is beyond pleased, and they also come from a single family, single parent household. So these are some of the ways in which adaptations can make a difference in somebody's life. And this is an example of some of the adaptations that we've built for a specific child. I will be talking about a few more examples a little bit later. And just based on this, you can see that you probably know a Sanaya in your community. Every community has children or even adults with disabilities who, when you look at it from a different lens, when you look at it from the adaptive design lens, you might now, or maybe by the end of the session, you might say, oh, you know what? I could make a quick solution that could mean they could do X, Y, and Z, as opposed to, not being able to do it. So we are hoping that is one of the, results of this session. Anu, next slide. Okay. So now that I've told you about a specific case, I'll tell you a little bit more about what our guiding principles are. Well, we build custom adaptations primarily for children with disabilities, but we will build them for anybody, any age. If you can't find it, the main thing is if it's not, as long as it's not commercially available. If it's commercially available, then we will refer you to whatever is commercially available and works for you. But if it is not commercially available, that is when we step in and we will build it for you. So that means, and the main, one of the guiding principles is that the item should be needed, it should be wanted, and it should be safe. So whatever we build, we want to make sure that the item is needed, it's wanted, and it's safe. So we will not, for example, build a wheelchair. That is beyond our capacity and it is not needed. There are perfectly acceptable sources for wheelchairs elsewhere. However, somebody gets a wheelchair and they find that the seat is too big and they're swimming in it. So there's no support. Or the seat needs a specific slant of cushion for them to be able to sit comfortably in it. Or, for example, or they might need better visibility while they're sitting in a wheelchair, which is usually below hip level for most people. So that's when we come in and we design solutions or create things and fabricate them. So you can then actually use that wheelchair in the manner that it's intended. And that's just one example of an adaptation. Again, as I said, I will be talking us through some other more specific examples. So that the item needs to be, it needs to be needed, wanted, and safe. The other thing, how do we ensure that the item is needed, wanted, and safe? Our process is collaborative. What does that mean? It means that our team doesn't go in to meet the client and say, hi, we're the experts, we know exactly what you need, and this is what we're going to build for you. Never. What we always, always, always do is engage with the client and with the client's caregiving team. Always. We will not go in and then we will, of course, we will support and make recommendations, but we will not be the ones deciding what you need, who decides that? If the client is in a position to communicate, that's the feedback we'll take. In addition to that, an occupational therapist, a parent, a teacher, a paraprofessional, grandparents have chipped in, siblings have. So what we try to make sure and do is that it is a completely well-rounded, collaborative process where we've engaged every stakeholder in that child's well-being. And that also ensures that not only is the item safe and needed, it will actually be used, because sometimes even the things that are bought and some really expensive things, they might be bought, but then, or given or donated. But then when you realize, oh, this is not exactly what I need, it sits in a closet somewhere or it'll gather dust somewhere. And that is not what we want to happen to adaptations, because these are labors of love. And you will see through the example. So we ensure that we take all feedback into consideration from the time of design to the finishing and the painting job. All right. And so the collaborative process ensures some of these features. And moving beyond the collaborative process. So the collaborative process is where we're involving still the client and people who know the client. But our organization is not interested only in changing that one life. We are immensely invested in changing that one life and the lives of people around that one person. But we are also invested in changing attitudes towards disability. And how can we do that? One way we found we can do that with our staff and our skills is to engage community members in the building process. So we have multiple events, but we also have regular volunteers. We have internship programs, educational programs where we involve people of different abilities and different backgrounds. And Tamara, my colleague Tamara, will be speaking after me. She will be telling you a little bit more about our educational programs. And the final point I want to mention while we are on this slide, I apologize, I didn't read you through the slide, but I'm hoping what I've said connects with what's written there and you had a chance to look at it. The final thing that I want to mention is the materials and techniques that we use. The goal, the emphasis for adaptive design is to use easily available materials and simple tools and techniques. So for us in New York, that means we use triple wall cardboard. I hope everybody can see that. I'm going to try and move it close to my camera. So that's triple wall cardboard or tri-wall cardboard. What that is 3 layers. So 3 layers of single layer cardboard stuck together. We don't make that, we buy that commercially, but we know we've known cases and places where people have made adaptations after collecting clean boxes and then sticking them together with layers together with Fevicol, weighing them down overnight. And then it's perfectly acceptable, strong tri-wall is created. So again, to emphasize, we use cardboard because that's convenient for us. It's an approachable material, it's light, and it's really, really strong. And by the time we are finished with it, in the sense that once the adaptation is made and we've primed it, painted it, and polyurethaned it, it's super strong. And it is also water resistant. It's not waterproof. We can't leave it out in the rain, but if a little bit of water gets on it, it can be wiped out. So, so as I said, we use wood, but we've also, we use cardboard, but we've also we combine it in areas where we need more strength with wood. We use plastics. We've not used bamboo, but we've known of cases in areas where cardboard is scarce or wood is expensive and bamboo is easily available. They've used bamboo or appropriate paper technology, which is basically layering paper with glue to make it really, really strong. And so I guess the point, what I would love for you to take away from this point is that it's not so important what exactly you use. What is important is that when you look at your community and you see a problem, you also think about creative solutions. You're proactively thinking about creative solutions. And one of the things could be, what are materials that are easily available to me, or what can then be converted into a low cost or no cost adaptation for someone. Right? All right. So Anu, next slide, please. That I hope you have a clearer sense of what adaptive design, what the underpinnings of adaptive design are, and all of this, all of these thoughts. I don't want to say they originated with one human being, but they definitely were encouraged and corralled, and many of them also originated with our founder, Alex Truesdale. So Alex, she's also our executive director for multiple years. And just after tirelessly working for over 30 years, she just retired last year. But she started thinking about adaptations even before she established adaptive design. So if I have to put a pin in it, she's always been interested in inclusion and diversity and all of that. But if I have to put a pin in it, I would say about 30 years ago for Alex, her aunt Lynn, whom you see in the photograph, she fell ill, or she was struck with some kind of disability where she lost the use of her hands. And this was extremely frustrating for her aunt, because her aunt was otherwise a very competent, very intelligent, completely ready to do what she needed to do kind of person. And she had always been self-reliant. So it was very frustrating to her to not be able to do simple things like comb her hair or put on her socks or open kitchen cabinets. So, and this is something that Alex couldn't bear to see, and neither could Lynn's husband, that is Alex's uncle. And it so happened that her uncle had a beautiful workshop in the home, and Alex, being Alex, is a creative, proactive person. So they got together and they came up with a whole bunch of ingenious solutions for her aunt. And this is what we mean by the concept of an adaptation. So an adaptation is not a physical thing. It is how you think about the world, how you see a problem and come up with creative solutions that are, again, I want to emphasize, safe, needed, and wanted. So in Aunt Lynn's case, I've just given you a couple of examples there of how they created solutions. Like you can see with the toothbrush, they had the tennis ball. So because she doesn't have the fine motor skills, she has the gross motor grasp that she could use. And that's how she did that. And with the hairdryer, really at that point, they literally just stuck it in a place that she could potentially just turn it on and not have to hold it herself, right? And they also did similar things with I don't have photographs of it, but they did similar things with her kitchen doorknobs and stuff where they extended them and made them larger. But we will see examples of switches being adapted that are similar to that in a few slides. So again, emphasize that when you see a problem in your community, we can all be part of the solution. And also important to know that you can corral your community to help, and that we've learned this now, also especially in the pandemic and in many other situations in India, people have always risen to help other people. So when you corral your community, and the basic trust that there are others out there who will be willing to help. Next slide, please. Anu, next slide. Thank you. All right, so how we did it, how did we start? This is kind of our who are we today. That slide looks full of people, but I just want to also mention that actually we are a staff of 9, which is smallish by New York nonprofit standards, but it's not small by the level of help that we provide and the kind of work that we do, because each of those 9 people wears multiple hats at ADA, and we pitch in wherever needed to spread the message, maybe build something. Even I, as a grant writer, I'm not a fabricator, I can't build an adaptation, but I've definitely learned some finishing techniques like edging, which means in an extreme emergency, if something is needed or somebody needs to be taught a specific skill, I can teach somebody edging. So it's kind of, it's a balanced, very amazing. I also want to emphasize that a lot of this, our work, each of us has quite a stressful job, and none of that would be possible if we didn't have the team that we have. And the team, in addition to the 9 staff members, all the other folks that you see, these are our committed, dedicated volunteers and interns. So Alex always says it takes a village, and that is very true. It does take a village. This is a part of the village that we've shown you here. All amazing. We have all kinds of different volunteer programs. And again, Tamara will probably touch on some of these. Just to give you a little more information about the organization, we work with this kind of team and volunteers who come in once or twice a day. We work with about 100 to 150 clients a year. We create custom adaptations. Sometimes we will also create a multi-user piece, which means it is a specific thing that is not available commercially, but it's not only meant for one user. It can be used by many people. And again, you will see examples of it later on. Our budget is almost $1 million. And our income comes from grants, government contracts, earned income, donations, and fundraisers. In terms of grants from foundations and government contracts, that is kind of falls under my purview. And we have some dedicated funders who funded us for many, many years. And then every year we have 2 or 3 new possibilities of foundations that we can apply to for funding. We also, project-specific funding depends what kind of projects are going on in that year, and sometimes we have multi-year projects. So that kind of funding is semi-reliable. I don't want to say completely reliable. Again, people who work with grants know you cannot depend and say, this year we got this grant, we're going to get it next year too. That is not the case. You have to work, not me. The whole team works really, really hard to make sure that the foundation that we apply to in 1 year will be invested in us and will want to give us a second grant in the following year and for many, many, many years, hopefully, if it falls within their parameters. In terms of earned income is we do invoice for everything that we build. However, we have a never say no policy. And what does that mean? It means that if we will build an item irrespective of somebody's ability to pay for it, that is never part of the equation. When something is built, that is not a factor in whether somebody gets an item or not. Capacity is, sometimes we have a wait list because our fabricators can't keep up with the demand. So then somebody might have to wait a little longer than normal, but they're never not given something because they couldn't pay for something. So that's why our reliance on grants, individual donations and fundraisers goes up, because our earned income component from the items that we build is very, very low. Just to give you a sense, even I want to say under 5% of our annual budget is actually through reimbursements for items, but even that 5% is probably a very generous estimate.
So
yeah.
95% is from
Sorry?
grants. 95% is from the grants.
No, I wouldn't say 95% is from grants. I would say about 45 or so. We have another source of earned income from the APH communication cards, which if I have time in this session, I will touch on, but I would like to focus first on the mission-oriented things that we do. And I can refer you to our website as well for something else. About 45% of, as I said, is about 45% from grants. And then we have donations and fundraisers as well. And when we, we sent an invoice just for our financial records, we sent an invoice for everything, but under 17% of our items are actually paid for. And most of that payment comes when we build something for a child in a school. If a child is at home and they're like with Sanaya's case and the insurance has run out, they really have no recourse. They need the item, but they have no money to pay for it. However, if you build it for a child in the Department of Education in New York, and if that item is on as a part of their individualized educational plan, the IEP, then the chances that we will get reimbursed are way higher. So most of that 17% of our items that are reimbursed comes from the IEP. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So that is the extent of the abstract conceptual background about adaptive design and my job and how we are supported and sustainability. Moving forward, the next slide that I will be talking about, they're all cases that we worked with, and I hope it gives you an idea of the scope of the work that we do, and it also sparks some ideas in your own head for your own communities, for your own spaces at any level, okay? So in this photograph, this is a 4-year-old Shayana. She has a form of dwarfism. Just quickly, I want to mention that we rarely solicit or ask for what the child's diagnosis was. If the parent or the therapist shares it with us, we will note it in our files. If they don't share it with us, we will take whatever information they've given us, because the goal again is to get them to do certain things. We are not medical. We don't have a medical background. It's more from the occupational therapy or physical therapy angle that we are coming at this. So Shayana has a form of dwarfism. So in the first photograph, you can see she's sitting on a wooden chair, and those are standard regulation chairs for a school in the DOE. And you can already see how uncomfortable that position is, and just not conducive to any kind of paying attention or academic progress. So I'm not 100% certain who reached out to us for her case, because usually these cases, when somebody reaches out, they would reach out to either a fabricator or somebody from our operations team. But however, she got to us. I'm sure our fabrication team, we have about 4 people on our fabrication staff, 2 of whom really work full-time on complex pieces like this. And the other 2 are more assistive in it. They assist the main, the 2 that work full-time on the complex. So in this case, I'm sure they consulted with her, whoever, her occupational therapist, her teachers, whoever was available. And they decided to create the adaptation that you see. For now, if you could look at the one on the far right, the 3rd photograph, that is the adaptation that we built for her. That is triple wall cardboard. And it's, as you can see, it doesn't look like cardboard anymore because it has been primed. Previous slide. Yes, it has been primed, painted, and polyurethane. I want to point out some really amazing features on this, and I will do that periodically for the different adaptations as well. But you're welcome to obviously be inspired again by some of these things. One of the things we always assume is that our adaptations and all the other services that the child needs and is receiving means that the child will develop and attain new skills, because that's the point of providing an adaptation. So we assume growth in different areas and at different levels. To accommodate for physical growth, at the bottom where her feet are, if you see there are 3 different layers of colors. Those are foot plates. Those are removable foot plates that we've made. So as she grows, the foot plates can be removed and she doesn't need a whole new chair. All we need to do is slide out the foot plate. Similar to the foot plate, she also has armrests where her arms are. If you can see that clearly, those armrests are layered so that those also can be removed, right? For safety reasons, we have belts for most of our adaptations. If the child needs them, we have belts, and those belts are usually removable. We use Beltex. It's a kind of elasticated fabric that we use that's also quite comfortable for the belts. Because of her condition, her head can sometimes be very heavy for her body, and it could be hanging from, she could find it fatiguing to some days. So for those days, if you see behind her, you can see there's a slot. That is a slot for a removable headrest. The headrest is clearly, she didn't need the headrest that day, so they didn't have that, but that is the slot that we would normally have the headrest in. And the purple material that you see, cardboard is quite soft and nice to sit on, but again, you can't sit on it for too long. So we use yoga mats to soften the seating areas, and even sometimes on the armrests and the bases and things like that. So, so these are some of the design features of the building design features. One thing I definitely want to mention while I am on Shayana's slide is, could I have the zoom reduced?
You want, no, this,
so while
it's on a full screen share. You want me to end the PowerPoint? Then it will become.
No. For me, what I see is a cut up picture, but if the attendees are seeing the whole thing, then I'm fine. They're seeing all 3 photos, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So, so anyway, so that chair that you see that she's sitting on in her classroom, clearly now she is closer to the table, is more supported, can do things in a better way. So she's not fatigued towards the end of the day. The amazing thing also is that the kids are taken to the park every day. So they just detach the chair from the base, and we built them in the middle picture. You can see she has this kind of trolley-like thing. So we built them that kind of wheelbarrow trolley. I'm not certain what we call it, but it trundles. So her chair fits tight on that, and she then is taken to the park. On days that she finds it fatiguing to walk for a long time, she's taken to the park in that. And sometimes she finds it hard to keep up with the kids. So so that is Shayana, and something that we made for her. Again, before I move away from the slide, one of the things I'm pretty sure all of you notice the beautiful color scheme and the design. So that is one big way in which we create items. Our aim is to create items that make a person included. It's not just about accessibility, it's ultimately about inclusion. And a lot of the things that people with disabilities use make them stand out, and sometimes not necessarily in a way that they would choose to stand out. right? So for us, it is important that when we create these adaptations, they are wonderful, beautiful things that the child or the adult loves, and not just loves, everybody around them wants it and envies them for it. So when we asked, and so we always take feedback from the client or people around them about what is the child like, what would they see, what would they like on their, what colors and cartoons and things like that. So when she's 4 years old, remember, so when our fabricators asked her, what would you like, Shaina? She just told them to mix it up. So they mixed it up, and they gave her a chair that looked like a rainbow, and she does like unicorns. And the paint job, that is another aspect that pulls in our educational angle. The painting is done by Charles, who's now one of our assistant fabricators. He's on staff, but he started with us in our internship program for youth with autism. So that was about, I want to say about at least 6-7 years ago, he started as an intern in our youth with autism internship program. And today he is an assistant fabricator with us. And he, in addition to many other things, one of the things he loves doing is finishing things with beautiful paint jobs. Next slide, please. Correct. So also this is Isaiah. He's 7 years old. He has cerebral palsy with many other complications. And one of the complications that you might have detected already in the second photograph where he's sitting on his adaptation is hyperextension, which is basically, when the tone is, when the joints and stuff are extended beyond what they should be able to extend, and makes the body very stiff. So the first photograph, you see him sitting on his mother's lap, and Isaiah is fed using a G-tube or a gastronomy tube, which is basically something that is hung up, a bag of food is hung up, and then it's connected directly to his stomach. So his mom had to sit with him like that in order to make sure that that gastronomy tube or G-tube was inserted safely, and it didn't hurt him, or he could be adequately and completely fed without any undue problems. But as he's growing and with the hyperextension, it has been very, very hard for it had been very hard for his mother to continue that process. And also you can see when you're sitting like this, right now she's holding a book, but when she's sitting with him with the feeding tube going in, she's probably holding on to him. So she can't really engage with him in any other way. Literally all she is at that point is a chair for the child. And that should not be the case for meal times with any child, right? So what we did again, and I think till then, he pretty much the only thing he had to sit on was his adapted stroller. He had no other alternative seating. So when we went to his home, we built him the chair on the right, and there are multiple features here as well. It is, there are these laterals and head support and foot plates. And then what you'll notice that we didn't have in the previous one, perhaps, I don't remember, but there is a tray that he has, an activity tray. And that clear acrylic that you see on top, that is also something we added as a feature so that it be raised and he could have books and stuff on it. But it could also be wiped down when he's using, if he's using anything messy or Play-Doh or anything else. So we tried, again, these are all things that probably came from feedback from the parent, because they know the child so well. So he is now being properly positioned during meal times. He probably doesn't use the tray during meal times, so his mom can read to him. The tray then comes back when he's looking at his iPad or engaging in some other activity. Next slide, please. This is a slightly older child. This is Dariana. She's 17. Also has some form of dwarfism, but in addition to that, she has scoliosis, which is like a curvature of the spine. And what we had seen with the first case, Cheyenne, the first case with the rainbow chair, was we built a whole chair ground up. We built everything for her right from the ground up. So it was a whole new chair. Now in Dariana's case, she's an older child. This is a lab classroom, a laboratory, and clearly that chair is too tall for her and it doesn't even fit her well. It's not supportive. It's not meant for anybody of her size or stature. So next slide, please.
Just a second, 1 second.
Yeah. So in this slide, you can see on the right that this is what we ended up building for her. So what the point I'm trying to make here is, in this case, we didn't build, because this chair would have been used by other students when Dariana was not in the class. So in the previous case, in Shayana's case and stuff, that is her assigned seat. So nobody else sits there. So we could just build a chair for her and leave it there. In this case, this chair would be used by other children who don't have the same issues with stature or with seating. So we have ended up building what we call an insert. So this thing is removable. So it attaches where you see the arrow in the back, the green arrow in the back of the chair, that is pointing, I believe, to, I'm sorry, my screen is very small, but that might possibly be pointing to one of the two straps that is holding that insert onto the regular chair. So there are two straps that holds that insert that we built to that chair. And then when they snap it open, they can just remove the insert and another child can use the chair. Some other cool features, because of her scoliosis, that upholstered kind of part that you see between her back and the back of the chair, there's another layer that is foam. That's maybe even the memory foam. That it's a cushion that we created to fit the contours of her body, so that she could have that supported back. And again, I'm always amazed by the resourcefulness and creativity of our fabricators, that they used foam for it. Our fabricator, not the one you see in the photograph right now, I will get to that in a minute, but our fabrication director, Antoinette, who's been with us for since the beginning for 30 years, she traced the back, I don't know how, used with paper, and then she transferred that and used that to contour the piece of foam, and she used an electric carving knife to contour the foam so that it fits Dariana's back. And then they upholstered it in some fake leather or something so that it's wipeable and you can disinfect it and things like that. So I think I'm amazed when things like that come up and I learn about them, because I'm not necessarily in the workshop all day. So I don't see these things, this magic happening, but I hear about it and then I'm like, ooh, need to share this. And the other cool feature, again, the second arrow that you see on the bottom, that, because that's a foot plate. So usually what happens is, if the chair is fixed and in a position where the child can use it regularly, we just leave a fixed footrest. But in this case, because other children are using it, it was made to slide out like a drawer, and it slides back in when somebody doesn't need to use it. And I believe Dariana uses it even to get onto her chair and get off it safely. So that's pretty cool. And on the left, it's a quick sense of what we do what our fabricators do when they go in, because whenever they go in, it's not like an ideal world where the child is waiting for them and the therapist and the pen. No, it's chaotic. And sometimes the child is not even there. And then the chairs are all messed up. They have to work in all kinds of conditions to find that perfect fit for the child. And they do it remarkably and marvelously every single time. And that's one, I think Rocio is probably frantically just tracing the bottom of the existing chair. So she has that size, in addition to Dariana's multiple measurements, of course, to bring it back to our workshop and start work on a mock-up. Next slide. This little cutie is 3-year-old Lucas. He has very good head control, but overall his tone is low and he needs more support in his upper body and head. What we built here is, again, it's a floor sitter, what we call a floor sitter. Our floor sitters can look different depending on the child. This is built for Lucas because his therapist wanted him to have a way to play while he's close to the ground. Lots of children with disabilities, sometimes when they are with their friends, even in, on the playgrounds and stuff, they can't get out of their wheelchair. So they're essentially stuck in a wheelchair. But with floor sitters, you can actually have children in a safe, supported manner so they can at least, participate in some of these play activities. And then again, I believe we do a lot of things with tilt that can tilt, again, based on therapist requirements, because some days they need a little more support and his head needs to recline back for therapeutic reasons. And we always have all kinds of paddings and belts, again, with input from whatever therapist or parent, or if there's a doctor involved in the process. And the headrest is there for when he needs it, and it's gently supportive. It's not like very harsh. So the tray is, again, added. There's a short video after this that Anu will probably can get to maybe now. Anu, if you want to go to look. That will show you that, that's with the tray that we built for him. So he's just practicing, fine motor skills here, picking up toys, putting them in a box. He's more supported. And the tray brings everything up at least to the right level for him to be reaching it. So when he's seated like this, because otherwise if he were just seated, in the chair, finding it on the floor and picking it up would have been a bit of a reach at that point. So, we can, if in the interest of time, we can keep moving if you like.
We'll just see him put one more object. Maybe.
Okay. I'm not certain about.
Okay. There. Okay.
Oh, okay. Next slide.
Yes.
This another slightly different. So again, I'm hoping that with these examples, you get a sense of the different types of adaptations that are possible in this world. In this case, this is called a Go Baby Go project. And it was the Go Baby Go project came out of the University of Delaware. Essentially what it is we all know about these ride-on cars that kids love to ride in, right? But obviously kids with disabilities, they find it impossible to ride cars because most of the, depending on a disability, because most of the controls are at the feet level, and they have all the different pedals. And also the seating is never supportive enough. There are no belts. There might be belts, but that's not enough. So this is, I want to say he's about 2 or 3 years old. His name is Archie, and he has no control over his limbs. He has no paralysis, but he can't control his limbs. And I think the goal was to give him, still then he had always been being pushed around. Mobility was not, he was not self-initiating any kind of mobility. He was always being pushed around. So all movement was controlled by somebody else. So with the Go Baby Go project, what the goal is to what we call switch adapt, which means we rewired the car to, so instead of having the foot pedals control, there's one giant yellow switch, which you can see in the second photograph on the steering wheel, the giant yellow switch. So that is what we've inserted into this car. We've rewired the car so that the start and stop function can be done just by pressing that giant switch. So even if you don't have fine motor control and stuff, you can start practicing with that. And we also built that foam chair for him with the belts so that he's safer and more supported. There is a video of this as well. So Anu wants to play that video. This is, I think, maybe the first time he's sitting in it. So obviously, he's still figuring things out and learning things.
Can you drive over it?
That is Adam, our fabricator.
Push. Go forward.
That's Archie's mom. And you'll notice, so that lady in the background is Archie's mother, and she has a control in her hand, if you notice, and that is the master control. So the child can make the car go forward and back, and even the steering is fully functional. They can change direction, but till they get that control, till they're able to do that in an intentional manner, the parent has the kill switch. So they can stop the car and using that kill switch. And they can also, I believe, steer a little bit from there. So, all right. So that was Archie testing his Go Baby Go for the first time. And this next slide is, I have it in here again because to show a different type of adaptation, but also to talk a little bit about when we say community engagement. This is one example of that community engagement that led to a very creative solution that we didn't have the capacity to explore or do. So the girl in the right with the headphones on, the noise cancelling headphones, that's Shira. She was an intern with us for many months, an occupational therapy intern, I believe. And she's the one who took on this project. That is a music box, a therapeutic music box, where, and she made that for an elementary classroom as a way for children with disabilities to practice fine motor skills. So it's not a clear picture, but the front of it has all these different types of switches that you can turn, put up and down, pull, whatever it is, different types. And each of those switches is connected to a piece of music. And it will, if you turn that the right way or you do the right action, the piece of music will play. And that is the engineering part that she did. She looked up all kinds of of all kinds of adaptations, and I believe she used what is this is the part where I will not be able to answer follow-up questions. This is so far beyond my area of expertise, but I will tell you what I understood. She downloaded all the music that was to be used in that music box onto a memory card, and then she programmed what is called a Raspberry Pi, which I understand to be a microcomputer that you can program to do certain things. And she inserted that into that Raspberry Pi, and that Raspberry Pi in the back, you can see the back that's open, that's where all that technical stuff sits, and it's all wired up to the different switches. So that's how each switch makes a different type of music go. So yes, and this is being used. This is an example of a multi-user piece, because this is being used in a classroom full of children, and all the children in that classroom are using it for different reasons, as opposed to say Shayana's chair or the Go Baby Go car. Those are clearly very user specific, while this is a multi-user piece. Next slide, please. This is an example of what looks like high tech, but it's actually not. Again, this is a motorized car with the remote control, and you can see the switches that make the car go are super tiny and obviously not at all accessible to anybody with a disability. So if you can create a simple housing mechanism and then the switches and create these, what we did was create these thumbsticks so that the switch area becomes the switch area becomes larger. That can be used then comfortably by a person with different levels of mobility, hand mobility, to make the car. And this is another use of a multi-user piece, because multiple children in a classroom with disabilities are using this to play with that toy. This is a mix of cardboard and wood that was used there. This was also a very fun, cool adaptation. Next slide, yes. So this couple, this married couple, they were a month away from having their first baby, and then suddenly realized that the dad would love to be able to hold the baby and move around with the baby safely in the house. So they reached out to us, and we were like, interesting. In a month, we need to create something that is safe enough to hold a newborn infant. Let's see. But obviously, our fabricators rose to that challenge, and they created this amazing adaptation, which slides. It's made with aluminum, it's aluminum, but there are some other ingenious things and fabric sewn by one of our volunteers into that kind of hammocky kind of area, which then slides very safely onto his existing wheelchair. And where you can see on the right, the two arrows, I want to talk a little bit about that. The bottom arrow, the one that points to the black clamp, that is an example of when, if you don't need to create a solution, don't do it. If there's something already available in the market, either ground up or something that fits in well with whatever you're designing, use it. Cut down on the time, because that is a regular bicycle clamp that people use on handlebars to attach things to. So we just use that to hold, make sure that the frame can slide in place. And then the blue, the second arrow, the one on top, that we have a 3D printer in our office, which is old now, but I think we have a new one now. But that is a 3D printing lock. So we 3D printed the lock to make sure that it could, once it's slid in, it would be safe. And the father is extremely happy with being able to have the, move around safely. They only use it in the home. They use it, but it's very, very helpful to him. Next slide, please. This is possibly my last slide, and then I will be handing it over to Tamara. We deal with people, as I said, of all ages, backgrounds, types of disability. Some people are born with disabilities, some, unfortunately acquire disabilities later in life. Any one of us tomorrow, we could be in that, we could experience disability. It could be temporary, it could be permanent, and as we age, more and more people are more likely to experience disability. In Gabrielle's case, she was in a car accident, much like Sanaya, but I think she was older when she was in the car accident, and she's now she's in her 30s, and she's also quadriplegic, paralyzed from the chest down, which I've been told is pretty common in the cases of accidents like this. She is a 30-year-old who loves to go out, meet friends for dinner and hang out and theater and all of the good stuff that New York offers. And mobility is not an issue with her in terms of the wheelchair. She's quite happy using the wheelchair. She has, however, no sensation below her legs. And one of the things, among the many things that she told us, was that one, when she goes to restaurants, she can't pull up completely to the table so that she can eat comfortably, which is understandable because sometimes handlebars and stuff get in the way, so there's a gap. So what she needed was a tray where she could then hold stuff on there while she was eating. But unlike the trays that we make for kids, where they can be pretty big and clunky, but they stay in one place and they're made of cardboard, she requested that, for understandably, because she wants to travel with it, she wants to move with it, right? She asked for a tray that was light, that was foldable, that was out of the way when she didn't need it. And this is kind of what we came up with. If you look on the right, that's the tray. We've used, in this case, you can see we've used two kinds of plastics. In another example of use what is available to create something amazing, our fabricators used a piano hinge, because it's very long, that tray, but it needs to be foldable. So it is foldable. So that fold part, under the fold part, there is a very long piano hinge. And the advantage is that it's made of brass. So it's a soft metal that we can then cut and contour to the shape of the tray. And that was another example of using some existing solutions and incorporating them into what is already things that we created. And the cutouts, the reason it has the clear cutouts, not cutouts, sorry, it has the clear sections, is because, as I said, she has no sensation below her waist. So the risk of bumping into things and hurting herself and not even realizing she's hurt herself are pretty high. So she wanted to make sure that whenever she was moving, and she could look down and make sure her feet are not bumping into things. I think there is a video, a short one of her using the tray.
And taking it down.
So the video is over now.
Yeah, next slide. And so I hope that this gives everybody a sense of what we mean by using adaptive design to create accessibility for inclusion, because it's at multiple levels that we all occupy our spaces, not just at the individual level, but at a societal and community level as well. So, so when one of us does well, everybody hopefully also does well. And that is also kind of the point of adaptive design, to make life not just better for one person, but for everybody in our community, and to change attitudes about what it means to be disabled and expectations about disability as well. I will now hand over this part of the presentation to my amazing colleague, Tamara Morgan, who is our Community Partnerships Coordinator. And Tamara, please continue.
Thank you, Michelle, so much for that lovely explanation of our work in terms of fabrication, adaptation, inclusion, and accessibility. As Michelle said, my name is Tamara Morgan, and I am the Community Partnerships Coordinator at Adaptive Design. I joined the team in 2015 after leaving my previous job as a creative art therapist. And a part of why I joined Adaptive Design was not only because I believe in the work thoroughly, but I also am a person who uses custom adaptations myself. I not only use a motorized wheelchair, but I use a custom light that helps me to be visible and safe in traveling because of my disability, osteogenesis imperfecta, which I'll talk a little bit about later. Next slide, please. Okay, so my role at Adaptive Design is to support and help community programs, outreach in adaptive design services, and accessibility and inclusion. Some of these programs are our internship program for university students, where we have students who join us from occupational therapy programs, physical therapy programs, speech language pathology programs, engineering programs, industrial design programs. Some of our fabricators actually joined us from industrial design backgrounds, both Adam and Rocio, who you saw a little earlier before. And then also I help to support our volunteer programs where we work very closely with retired professionals. So these are individuals who have moved on from regular 9 to 5 work and want to give back to communities. And so right now we have about 10 different retired professionals who join us weekly to support the adaptation work that we do. And as Michelle mentioned before, we are a very small but mighty team, and we could not do all of the work that we do without our interns and volunteer support. Another program, another unique program that I would like to talk more specifically about is our Made to Learn program for youth with autism. Okay, and so this program started at Adaptive Design maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We had another program that we were running called the Adaptive Design Shop program, where we worked with industrial designers, industrial arts teachers, pardon me, who work in public schools in New York City, and we trained them to teach their students how to make adaptations. And so those teachers are working with those students to create 5 basic adaptations. They make easels, footrests, seat wedges, writing easels, and slant boards, okay? And then we realized that the program could be expanded much further, meaning students could work on much more. Students with disabilities are very capable, and it's really just presenting the team with the opportunity to rise to that occasion. Thus, we created the Made to Learn program, where students, teachers, therapists, and paraprofessionals join us once a week in our location, in our workshop in Manhattan, and they work closely with our fabrication assistants and fabricators to build custom adaptations. So by custom adaptations, what Michelle shared before is creating adaptations to meet the need of one person. So those students can build a seat for a peer that may have trouble reaching a desk in their classroom. They can build steps, as you see in this first picture here. They were building steps for a student who needed to reach a smart board but was of shorter stature, so needed something to help him reach the smart board, okay? So those are the students there to the left, smiling proudly for the work that they have completed. And not only are we working with the students once a week in our workshop, but we also offer a program called Train the Trainer, where we are working closely with the teachers, therapists, and paraprofessionals to gain the skills in adaptive design to then teach their students in-house in the classroom, okay? So that's what we see in the second photo to the right here. We see Miss Sarah's classroom with her students, where she has basically outfitted her entire classroom to be an adaptive design workshop. And so the students work on taking orders from different teachers in the school, different therapists in the school for their peers, and not only for their school, but for other schools in Manhattan. And so they turn out hundreds of adaptations during the year. So it is a program that we are very, very proud of. And we also are looking to expand that program and are currently working with 2 other public schools in New York City to bring the Made to Learn program to. Next slide, please. Okay, so here are 2 photos of 2 students who we worked with closely. They both now, Carrie and Jordan, who you see with Sheik here in the middle, have graduated from the program. They graduated from high school, but were stellar students to work with. And they built the chair that you see on the right here for their classmate Sheik. So Sheik had trouble sitting comfortably in a seat and safely. So they designed and built a chair that would go over the standard chair in the classroom and keep him safely positioned in the seat so that he can reach the table and maintain safety. And as you can see, they were all very proud and happy of the work that they did together. Next slide, please. Okay, so that was a little bit about our Made to Learn program. And really, another point to be made about that program is that it is a program that could be created anywhere. There are people with adaptation needs everywhere, and there are people that want to participate everywhere. And many times, the people that want to participate are the people with the very needs themselves, and they should not be excluded from those opportunities. They should be welcomed with open arms because they oftentimes have some of the best ideas. Okay, so that leads us into this slide here where I'm talking about the light bar adaptation. So this is how I originally became connected with adaptive design in 2006. I was an undergraduate student at a local university here in New York City. I had just moved out of my parents' home to move into the residential facility of my school. And I realized how not visible I was to many people in my school, in crossing the street. It's a little hard to tell from the position where I am now, but I am only 3'2" and sitting I'm even shorter than that. And I also have a bone condition called osteogenesis imperfecta, and that condition makes my bones very fragile. I'm 35, and to date, I probably have had over 60 bone fractures, and it can happen very easily. I can bump into something, or someone can bump into me by accident, and it can cause a bone fracture. So I realized once I moved on my own, I needed something that would keep me safe. And I tried many things on my own. I tried bike lights, I tried reflector tape, I tried flagpoles, but none of those things really maintained over time. I could hit a bump in the street and the lights would fall off and they no longer were serving their purpose. So I happened to, at the time, know someone who knew someone who worked at Adaptive Design. So the power of connection. And she told me, I know of an organization that might be able to help you. And really within months of meeting the team at Adaptive Design, they created a light bar for me that really changed my life. And that is, driving motivation of why I believe so viscerally in this work and want everyone to have the adaptation that is right for them. And with that said, the first adaptation on the left-hand side is one of the first iterations of the light. And with every design, what we learn is the design can always be improved upon. So the first light was orange. It was a big bulb, very strong and sturdy and powerful at night. But what we learned is that during the day, the orange bulb would blend in with the sunlight and then was not as effective. So people walking in, the New York City streets were not able to see that the light was physically on. So then it was not as effective and hence not keeping me as safe. So we went back to the drawing board, and many, many years later, in between these two photos should be maybe 3 or 4 other iterations of the light. We have had maybe 6 in total since 2006. But today we are at photo on the right under 2019, where you can see the light has transitioned tremendously. So we have improved upon the design to make it telescoping, where I can pull the light up and down with my hands. So when I'm indoors, it doesn't need to be as high. And then when I'm outdoors and need to be more visible, I can pull it up and maintain the safety and visibility that I need. We also realized that it was more effective to use LED lights instead of the bulb flashing light. And so now those lights are much more powerful in both day and night. And so we were not running into the issue of the light not being visible in the daytime. And thus it's made it much more effective. So these two iterations just go to show that just because something may not be commercially available, it does not mean that it cannot exist. It simply needs people who are willing and able to create change and willing to take a chance and imagine what could be possible. I came to adaptive design really with just a thought in mind, but I had no idea what it could look like. And within just a few months, my experience and my life was changed. So in closing, what I would like to say is, or just to hone in on the points that accessibility, inclusion, is what adaptive design stands for. But it does not just have to live at our Midtown Manhattan location. It can live anywhere. And so I hope that each of you that had the opportunity to join us today are inspired to create some amounts of change where you are. It can even start with creating an adaptation for where you're sitting right now. If you're not comfortable, you can begin to think about how that space can be changed and more accustomed to what you need. And then it can branch out and grow. So with that, thank you all so much for allowing myself and Michelle the opportunity to be here with you today. We have additional resources on our website. We have a learning library where we have a series of about 33 videos that demonstrates how you can begin to create adaptations with really not only cardboard, but whatever material you have available to you. It's really changing your thinking about what can be possible versus the material, because really anything can be possible. Thank you so much. Oh, and one other thing, I don't want to forget that. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. These are our email contacts. The info email, you can reach us all directly, but if you want to reach either myself or Michelle directly, these are our 2 email addresses. And with that, thank you kindly.
Thank you so much, Tamara, and thank you so much, Michelle. I think that this has really opened up our hearts, opened up our minds, and our vision of what is possible. And I think disability has to be set aside and ability has to replace it in this context, because it's accessibility is all in whether we are catering to the needs of a person, and that person is not duplicated, is not a mass product. That person is a unique being, and therefore products that are mass produced are useful to some extent, but not to 100%. We have in psychology this realization and insight that all people are like other people in some ways. We are all like some others, so some groups of people are similar to each other, but there are some aspects of ourselves that are completely unique. And what has been so inspiring for me is that you are representing and thriving and supporting an organization that recognizes that there is the need to adapt to the uniqueness of a person's circumstances, uniqueness of a person's abilities. And it's just been so amazing. It's been an amazing journey in the last hour that you both have shared. We would like to open it up to the question answer session right now. So I did notice that I have some questions. I will just, okay, so let's just see some, there's a lot of appreciation as well. I must be spontaneous and share some of this appreciation as well. So there is Shama who's telling you, Tamara, that you're a very cute person and she is in love with you now. And Dr. Papur Gayatri has said, it's a wonderful session, thank you all. And Ruchi Raval has said she would definitely love to have such an ideal organization in India. But the whole point of this session today is to open up something. It could be the catalyst for one person in the group, perhaps. Just one is needed who could catalyze, just like Alex, when she saw her aunt experiencing difficulties, that was a catalyst for Alex. Now, I do have, and there's Mona Lisa who said it's an eye-opening and inspiring session. Raman Barman who has said really wonderful session. You people are doing a great job. Michelle and Tamara says, Aditi Pandit, keep it up, God bless. Big salute to Miss Tamara from Dr. Soumitra Sawant of Sydenham College. Sharmila Yadav says, thanks Tamara ma'am for such a wonderful session. It's great, very motivated, says Shama. Mr. Santosh Kumar says, very interesting session. Let us go. Ms. Bharti Singh says, it's difficult to express in words. It's something beyond wonderful. Principal Dr. Jayashree says, very, very informative session. Ms. Seema says that she was unaware, many of us were unaware of such things. There are many who are Rinku Gala, such amazing, inspiring and outstanding work. Let's go to the questions. So one of the questions that I have seen is that Michelle and Tamara, a question that has been raised is there any opportunity in India where you could provide internship in India through some contacts? And there's another question which is related to that. How can what ADA is doing in Manhattan, New York, how can it be adapted to the Indian context? So Tamara and Michelle, who would like to answer this question, these two related questions? Michelle, yeah, go ahead, Tamara.
Michelle, do you want to go first and then I can respond after?
Okay, all
Sure.
right, we go to Michelle.
So a short answer about the internships in India, we don't. Nobody has really, there have been isolated times when people who visited New York in our office and have spent some time with us have then taken the techniques back and done small projects on their own with their groups, but there isn't like an organization or a project within an organization that does adaptive design. So unfortunately, at this point, there is no scope for an internship in India. The second question was, what was the second question, Anu?
How to adapt what ADA is doing in Manhattan, New York to the Indian context.
Okay, so again, that the emphasis for us is always on using your local resources to come up with solutions that will help a person have more accessibility to what it is that they need to do. So we have a couple of different, we don't have capacity to start projects in other places or to shepherd them or to fund them or anything, but people who are motivated have come to us. They've spent time with us, they've taken courses with us, learned with us, because we also offer courses in this, which is part of the income or not. But anyway, so they've come and they've taken courses with us, then they've taken it back to their countries, including Guatemala. And I believe there's some stuff happening in Peru. There's like a couple of projects in upstate New York. And then the techniques they learn from us, but then because they know their conditions well, that is when they corral their own community to get different pieces of expertise that they may not necessarily have the money to hire. I hope I'm answering this question, because there isn't really a short answer.
Yeah, so what I can understand here is that ADA, or Adaptive Design Association, has very open arms. So if someone can find the funding to go to Manhattan and study in their organization for a month or 2 months, and they offer their learning wholeheartedly, then you're equipped with that learning. You can come back to your country, to your city, to your neighborhood, and you can adapt what you have learned at ADA to your own context. So I think that's, Tamara, would you like to add something?
Yes. What I would like to add also is that in the past, when we have had others join us from other countries internationally, they usually are joining as either a part of a university, either an organization. There's a strong community base where they are coming from, and the learning that is shared is not only within one person, but then transferred to everyone in that community. And that's what creates the most effective change. It's very difficult if only one person is trained or learns about adaptive design, but then does not share, because if for any reason that person moves on, then it's not institutional, and then it's not able to continue. So it's very important for the knowledge and the expertise and opportunities to just continue to be transferred, and not just within one, but shared to all.
Yes.
And I'm going to quickly add that on our website, that last slide, that is, you'll find that learning library that Tamara mentioned. That will not teach you to make a specific adaptation, because as you've probably now gauged by now, there is no one specific type of adaptation for any reason. Each of those things are uniquely suited for that individual. But what we have in the learning library is a library of techniques. There are about 30 short videos that will show you what are the safe, appropriate ways to work with cardboard in our situation. But could possibly, apply that to some other conditions, or figure out in your situations what works best for you, if it's wood. And the other thing we also mentioned strongly to people is look in your community. People are always there wanting to provide their services and their resources. If they have full-time jobs elsewhere, they might be looking to volunteer. Like, for example, as we mentioned, all our retired professional volunteers, these are highly skilled people that we would not be able to hire otherwise. Retired architects, retired designers, retired from the publishing industry, teachers, and they all come to us with this lifetime of skills, and then they give that time and energy and effort to us. And they do that. They come once a week for a few hours, maybe they come twice a week for a few hours, but that expertise that they bring, because we have encouraged that and we've opened that opportunity up, is invaluable to us. And so, yeah, and we have an open source policy, as Anu mentioned. So If you look at our website and you practice those techniques and you do it in a safe manner, then you should be able to, please always consult with experts. The one thing we discourage strongly, repeating Tamara's point, is you are not a lone wolf. This is not a lone wolf kind of situation. This is a very much collaborative, community-based activity that involves multiple people for multiple reasons. So, yeah.
So I do want to share that here somebody had a related question. Somebody had a related question where they felt that some of the techniques that were being described were very expensive and were not suitable to the Indian economic situation. I just want to share a couple of observations before I hand over to the guest speakers. One is that the whole premise of Adaptive Design Association is resourcefulness, and it is to minimize cost while not compromising safety and quality at all. So second, I just wanted to share that India has a lot of talent in product making. We have artisans and engineers who are very, very, very talented. So if we take Tamara's point, and it's not Anne Michel's point, and we don't have one lone wolf going to ADA Manhattan and getting all expertised up. Instead, if there is a collaborative group which then can come and work with local artisans, local engineers, and use locally available materials, I think it's very much possible to have this concept adapted to the Indian context. So,
absolutely.
Yes, yes, Michelle.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's exactly it. The idea, because I may have multiple times in the past referred to our work as Jugaad, adaptive design work, which my colleagues may or may not have understood, but essentially what we call Jugaad is what people call resourcefulness. So that is the key. The key is resourcefulness. The key is creativity and openness and humility and sharing and collaborative work, And there was something that I did want to build on that Anu mentioned, if I can remember it. What was
the resource, the materials?
Absolutely. The local resources are key. And I have no doubt that if needed, at some levels, there could be volunteer positions, but this could also be a great way of supporting the economy, where with funding, you could also hire local people with local skill, like carpenters and things like that, to build these items. It doesn't, it's not just about the people like who are doctors or occupational therapists or nonprofit professionals. What you're also creating is this kind of other industry where because our fabricators, as we mentioned, are industrial design backgrounds. They're not therapists, they're not doctors. That's why they work closely with therapists and doctors. We have an OT consultant on staff, but she's not hyper involved in all the adaptation. And the other group that I want to mention that could be included in the people who make these adaptations are obviously people with disabilities.
Yes, yes. So I want to stress on this. I hope that everyone saw how collaborative ADA's philosophy and practice is. So it is they're totally collaborating with the client, who could be a 4-year-old child. It could be a 6-year-old child wanting a unicorn on their seat, who wants a burst of colors on their chair, as well as the parents, as well as the teachers, as well as the paraprofessionals, as well as the occupational therapists, speech therapists, whoever may be the case. There was a question earlier whether you are catering to all disabilities or whether you are exclusive to some particular types of disabilities. Which one of you would like to answer that? Tamara?
I think I can respond. Yes. We do not cater to one specific disability. It is really whomever comes to us with a specific need. So the need and the request for that need for us is what's most important. If there are times where we are not sure about a presentation of a disability, that is why we very much work with the individual's care team, their therapists, their parents, their teachers, whomever is closest to that child, because they know them best, and we are coming in as a support, but not ever as the source that knows the absolute solution. We are creating it in part with the team. So with that said, we work with seniors who their needs are changing. So not necessarily that they had a born condition, but that their needs are changing and that they're needing more support to do a particular activity. We work with infants and toddlers. We work with school-age children, adolescents, adults. Really, there's no limit. However, if at times there might be an adaptation that is requested that may not be the safest for us to build. And in those situations, we recommend that the individual connects with their care team, their doctors, to see what might be the best thing to support that particular request.
And thank you so much, Tamara. You explained it so very well. And there are a lot of requests from participants who are saying they have a PhD in human development, or they may be working in the disability sector. So they want to be connected and to be involved somehow with ADA. So is there anything, now that we have all transitioned, at least during the COVID crisis, to working from home, and so much is happening on the virtual platform, could you consider in the months to come, whether you've not had it so far, but could you perhaps take it back to ADA and consider involvement of some kind from a long distance away?
Right.
We are evolving. We are evolving during this COVID crisis because because of the COVID crisis, the department thought of webinars, because otherwise I would wait for the alumni to come to India and then be calling them up on the phone or WhatsApping them, and my colleagues also, Ms. Rhonda, Payal, Dr. Rege, can you please come at such and such day? Okay.
Yeah.
You have a family engagement. Now, COVID has given us some strengths. We have, so
Absolutely.
perhaps you can.
Yeah, this would not have been possible. This very conversation would not have been possible before COVID days. We wouldn't have, or at least,
Yeah.
I probably would not have been a presenter at one of your series if it was an in-person event.
Yeah.
This makes it easier for me to do this. So the short answer first, you can start. We don't have a program right now of that nature, and you've seen our capacity. It's a small-ish staff. So to start any new project, which in the long run will benefit us, but even to get that off the ground in an organized manner with the resources, and to make sure we leverage the expertise that everybody's offering us, because it would be wasteful if we just said yes and then we don't know what to do with that expertise because we don't have the capacity to handle it. To avoid all that, right now the short answer is we don't have a program that would leverage your expertise immediately. You could definitely, I would strongly recommend what Tamara said. Follow us on social media. That's where we put out our most updated information. So as soon as when we are still dealing with some of the COVID crisis fallout. For example, we've pivoted beautifully because we can't go to people to make adaptations. Our process is a very in-person process. Our fabricators go to the houses or the schools to do fittings, and they come back, they make an iteration, they go back, they do a fitting, they come back, they make modifications, they paint, they prime, then they do a delivery and a final fitting. So you can see it's a very in-person process, which is impossible right now. So instead of that, our fabricators are now sewing fabric masks, and they're 3D printing shields and stuff that we are now donating to our clients and to hospitals. So that is kind of what we are very, very occupied with right now, is just responding to this crisis, like many of all of us in this audience. We are responding to this crisis, and for the most part, all of us are doing a brilliant job of being, proactive and positive and resourceful in this situation. So we would love to leverage, and we appreciate the offer, and I'm 100% certain that all of that would translate to some amazing things for adaptive design. And we will definitely take that back to the team, and we will have more discussions with Anu and other folks to see how that would pan out. But the way for folks to keep track of when that opportunity arises, because it won't arise, to be honest, in the next 2 to 3 months, we will not be able to offer any new programmatic activities or opportunities for volunteer engagement even, because each of those things takes time and effort for us to generate and develop and plan. So, but in 3 months' time or 4 months' time, when we've had some more time to breathe and discuss and possibly think of ways to engage people, our social media and website are the places where we will be putting out these call to actions, which is what we do. We put out call to actions. We have events on certain days where we have volunteer engagement, like Giving Tuesday, and that's where you will get the most updated information. So if you go to our website, it may be on the flyer, but it is pretty straightforward. It's adaptivedesign.org.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll make that available, and it is on the video as well. I'm going to change the question. So I think that some participants need a clearer understanding of the funding, because I have a participant saying, is it possible to continue repeat the adaptive effort for long term, as only few efforts through IEPs are reimbursed? So I think I'll answer this just for sake of time. But I do want to say that so the organization, can you confirm, Tamara, is it over 30 years old?
We have been in existence since 1998, but the concept of the work has been existent since Alex started another program at the Perkins School for the Blind, which he started Assistive Device Center. And there, the idea of adaptive design was born, in addition to land. So it is over, I want to say over 34 years old now, the theory and practice of adaptive design.
So, okay, so thank you so much. Yes, so I think that participants who are wondering whether the ADA efforts can be sustained, well, surely they can. And I want to reiterate that Michelle, in her presentation, has shared that they have an annual turnover of $1 million US. A third of that budget is the responsibility that Michelle holds in her position. So a third of the $1 million, she is responsible for the grant writing. That means these are proposals that go to foundations that provide funding. And they, however, 45% of the $1 million is met through foundations and grants. I mean, the foundations grants.
So about
I'm back to Michelle to clarify this.
Yeah. So about in any given year, about 35 to 45% comes through grant writing, grant proposals, and foundations that fund us. And then a part of what is folded in also is a government contracts. We have small city contracts, not a lot, but enough. And then the rest of it can fluctuate slightly year to year, but we have donations, as I said, donations and fundraisers also we rely on, and they bring in about a third of our income every year. We have one big annual fundraiser at the end. We kick that off with a day of volunteering on Giving Tuesday. And then the earned income part, yes, we cannot rely on the income that is generated from the adaptations that we build to sustain us. That is nowhere close to enough, but we have other sources of earned income that I didn't get into in the interest of time. But
them right now briefly.
Sure. We do charge for our courses and trainings. So for as much as possible, we have all the prices listed. So those that is one source of earned income for us. The biggest source of earned income is there is literally one item that we make that would be considered a commercially kind of, we make it in a commercial fashion in that it's not custom. These are called tangible symbol cues. I don't have an example of it, but you can check them out on our website. They are these communication cards with 3D with the three-dimensional objects embedded in them, and they are used by people with with vision impairments and deaf blindness to communicate. And we sell, we make and sell these in lots on order from the American Printing House for the Blind, which is in Kentucky, I believe. That is the largest nonprofit in the US for individuals with visual impairments and blindness. And that is the only, it's the only commercially available item that we make, because they then take the stuff from us and they put it on their website, and people, teachers and therapists all over the country buy that item from the website, not from us directly, from APH.
Yes. So
But
the Kentucky Association, which is the largest
American Printing House for the Blind.
Yes, American Printing House for the Blind. You are making these communication cue cards, which are used by those with hearing impairment, visual impairments, and there is earned income through that. You are not directly selling them, it is through the American Printing House.
Yeah.
Can I just add a little?
Yes, of course.
So we will not directly sell the set that we make for APH. That we are not legally allowed to do, but we make a number of other cues on order for other schools. So a teacher might say, the child needs to communicate that they want to do X, Y, and Z, and that may be something that's not in the box. So we'll then create something for them. That is a whole different conversation that we should be having at another different point.
That's a different session altogether. So I will halt you there. I'm just going to come to the last two questions. One, Sharmila Yadav has asked a question that some of her students are orthopedically handicapped and they don't wear any they don't wear any slippers or shoes. And she wants to know how, this may be something that she can email, but you can just share a couple of ideas maybe. Footwear is the footwear.
Tamara,
do you have any thought? I have a thought, but
yes, sure. So we on a few different occasions have had different organizations join us in groups from different places, different countries. And we had a group several years ago who shared with us that the need that she was seeing most in her country was the need for prosthetics for the children that she was working with. And what she came up with was using yoga mat, so a flexible material with paper mache to create a brace of some sort. So there are possibilities. We may not create something of a sort if we do not have the request for that, right? So we're not just like creating anything just to create it. We have to have the need requested first, and then we have to go to the drawing board to see how it can be possible to fabricate it. But there are ways that different footwear can be created out of locally resourceable materials.
Okay, I do believe that we will shortly be needing to close the session because we have exceeded the time. But one last question, Michelle, is I had announced in the last webinar that this is an award-winning nonprofit. So can you very, very briefly share about the MacArthur grant?
Correct. So our founder, Alex Truesdell, in 2015, because of the innovative nature of this work, was awarded the MacArthur Fellowship, which is very prestigious fellowship given to various different types of people, usually in the arts. She was one of the first people who got it in the field of, say, broadly social work, I guess. And it was really quite amazing to be nominated and then to be selected and to know and to receive that she doesn't need the validation, but it is always nice when it is validated, the work. Because I did quickly notice somebody asked if we could offer training online. Currently it is hard to offer training online because it's a very we can't offer training online because it's a very hands-on learning process. We want to make sure it's safe. But given the COVID crisis, as Anu was saying, we are learning to be resourceful. So right now we are still designing some basic on virtual experiences, which is more along the lines of a tour of our space, and then like just examples of an adaptation, and maybe walking people through a very simple hands-on activity. It is not done yet. We're still testing it. So please, again, follow us on social media website, and when these opportunities come up, you'll be able to. Sorry.
No, that's great. So I do want to share that here we are having an interaction between two of the hottest spots. I mean, in with regard to COVID, Mumbai, New York, and what we are seeing here is resilience of spirit and the caring and sharing, which is part of our mission in the College of Home Science, Nirmala Niketan, and which is so clear in the mission of Adaptive Design Association. I would need now to, I would like maybe one or two participants, let me see whose video is on, if they would like to share their experience today. I noticed that Aditi Pandit, would Aditi Pandit like to share? Would you like to share anything, Aditi?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to share. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
It was a very nice session, and what you guys are doing is just amazing work, and you're helping so many people with different disabilities. I just had a thought, like I was just thinking that it is so amazing that people like you are there, that you are helping out people who you're working as a non-profit organization, and you're helping out to different sorts of people, giving them making their lives easier. So you're doing just a good job. That's all
Thank
I
you
would like
so
to
much,
say.
Aditi. Just one other person. Let me see now. 1 minute. I saw Kanika Gupta. Is she around? Kanika, would she like to? Kanika, would you like to share? Or let's see somebody else. Melania spoke last time. Let's see. Okay. I think that Kanika is not connected to her audio. So there is so much value that has been shared today. Without much ado, I would like to invite Ms. Khyati Sampath to share the vote of thanks. Is Ms. Khyati available? Co-hosts, is she available?
Yeah.
Yes, there she is.
Hello, everyone. So very quickly, I know we have exceeded a bit, but we need to, of course, thank many people who have made this event successful. So firstly, the management and principal, Dr. Geeta Ibrahim, I would like to thank them in terms of their constant support, encouragement. They have always given a go-ahead in terms of our ideas. So this was one of them, and therefore, thank you so much, management and principal ma'am. Secondly, of course, Michelle and Tamara, thank you so much. It's early morning there. You have been with us for over 2.5 hours now. The ideas that you shared were immensely inspirational. I will not go into details because the participants, Dr. Bakshi, they have already mentioned the nitty-gritties and things that they liked. But I would definitely like to say that, Michelle, you were so crisp, clear, the way you shared with us, the personal, I mean, the individual case studies, the equipments that you showed, they themselves are like going to be, inspiration in terms of like nicely said, jugaad. So that's the Indian version of being resourceful. That's very true. So it definitely will ignite some ideas, I'm sure, in the minds of the participants. Tamara, I would really want to say that you have such a positive and humble persona in you, and that in itself is extremely inspirational for us. So thank you so much for being for this particular session. Secondly, the staff of the department, all 7 staff of the department, they have always been there in and around, organizing and doing the running about. Very importantly, the MSc student volunteers, they have been working so diligently, so unconditionally, day in and day out. They have been extremely hardworking. It's not possible. We wouldn't have been able to pull through without you people. So thank you so much. You actually become the backbone. If you notice, during the session, they had so many duties. Right now also, they have been constantly been WhatsApp, on the Zoom chat. They have been, very just available, just right in time. So thank you so much. Participants, nothing is, fruitful without, nothing is no event is a success without your participation. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for the patience as well. And lastly, I'd like to mention that you will soon receive a feedback form link on the WhatsApp groups, which I request that you please fill it in as soon as possible. And once you fill it in, you get the certificate. You will be getting the certificate within a week's time. So thank you so much for being around for almost 2.5 hours now. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Can we have Ms. Rhonda briefly? Yes. Ms. Rhonda, one last sentence from you before I end.
Okay. Yes, as Dr. Anuradha Bakshi was sharing some of the thanks and the feedback written on the chat, and even the person Aditi who came, it is evident that so many are bursting with wonder and appreciation. And of course, Khyati Sampath has already shared the vote of thanks. So many people were responsible for this. And it's a wonderful thing that has happened. Yes, Michelle and Tamara, you will be in our hearts for forever now. And there will be lots of people getting in touch with you also. And Dr. Bakshi will now share with you some of the other programs also that we are going to have. So hang on there, listen before she closes. So over to Dr. Bakshi.
So I just want to share screen very briefly. So on Saturday, we have our 5th webinar, Yoga Beyond Aches and Pains, a yogic approach to mental health. And this is a session in which the use of yoga for mental health will be explained both theoretically as well as through various asanas. So we will be sending this flyer out today. Once again, all right, once again, we have Ms. Tamara here, and we have now with Ms. Michelle here, and with having seen both of them again, I will now be ending the meeting. Thank you one and all, and thank you, God.